Hey, everybody, what's up? Welcome into the Athletics Best on the Board. Here with Andrew DeWitt is Michael Beller. We are about to take a look ahead to Week 13 lines to kick off, this episode of Best on the Board. A little bit later, Melas of No Dunks will be joining me to take a look at Monday's NBA slate. Always a fun day in the NBA on Monday, but we start off with the NFL. We start off with Andrew DeWitt. DeWitt, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing awesome. Fun weekend of NFL games. I feel like I was looking at some stats, like the NFC teams that started out super hot at the beginning of the year, now like falling off a cliff. It's just gonna be super interesting to see how the rest of the season plays out, especially as we get into December, January. The weather flips a little bit. Teams get, injuries are piling up for teams. So I'm just excited to look at some of these betting opportunities as we get starting the week here.
Yeah, we are echoing one another. I talked about this on Monday's episode of the Fantasy Football Podcast, where it hasn't necessarily been like the best pure football season. I don't know if we could say that we've got these ultra standout teams or that we've had the best just individual seasons or, just all those sorts of things. Like it's not necessarily the best one of those in my lifetime, but I think we have a super fun finish to the season with the way the AFC is stacked up, with the way that the divisions are stacked up in the AFC, the way that the NFC is going to have some really fun jockeying for position at the very top of the conference. And then you've got the Niners, the Vikings, and the other teams who are going to be fighting for those last few berths into the playoffs. Like it's going to be a really fun, exciting, competitive finish to the regular season. So I think we have a lot to look forward to in this remainder of the NFL year. Let's get to these Week 13 picks here. DeWitt, we've got a little bit of a fun situation ahead of us on this episode where not only do we have our first head-to-head pick of the season in the early lines, we also are just living in the same two games, and that just happened, not on purpose, just by happenstance. We both like looking at Patriots-Bills. We both like looking at 49ers and Seahawks. One of these is a head-to-head. One of them we just have plays in the same game. Let's start with that head-to-head play, maybe the biggest NFL game with what we were just talking about in Week 13, Patriots and Bills. The winner will be the leader of the AFC East and potentially in line to maybe knock off the Ravens and get that top seed in the AFC. Patriots are 3-point underdogs in this game in Buffalo over at BetMGM, the presenting sponsor of Best on the Board. So, DeWitt, what do you got and why? And then I'll come in and tell you why you're wrong.
Sounds good. I have the Patriots +3. This team is on fire right now. Yes. And, it's not necessarily that, the offense is world beaters right now. It's more that the defense is carrying the team, and then Mac Jones isn't making any mistakes. He has 2 interceptions in the last 5 games. His completion percentage is above 70% in the last 3 games. I love the Patriots run game against that Bills defense. The Bills defense run game has been a little leaky lately. And, the 3-headed monster they have going with Harris, Stevenson, and Bolden, they've just been great right now. And the Patriots just know how to win. Belichick's a great coach. I think coaching can be overrated in the NFL sometimes, but I don't think when Bill Belichick is involved, it doesn't seem like it's overrated. He knows how to create a team that's going to win games. And then you're looking at the Bills. Like part of this is like taking the Patriots because I think they're in a really good place right now going into December. But on the same side of the game, on the other side of the coin is, the Bills are 3-3 in their last 6, and they played one of the easiest schedules in the NFL. They kind of went through that cupcake row earlier in the season. So, now that they're playing some tougher teams, it's going to start adding up for them. I just see this game as where, Matt Judon has another great game. He has 11.5 sacks already. They dominate, gives Josh Allen fits all night because he's going to get in the backfield. And then the Patriots offense takes care of the ball, runs the ball, doesn't make any mistakes. And then they kind of either sneak out a win or the Patriots, kind of cover at the last second with a really close game.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because both of these teams have beaten up on those bad teams. And I saw some people wanting to play that game with the Patriots coming into last week's game or Week 12, yesterday's game, as you and I are sitting here talking about this against the Titans, by saying, yeah, sure, they've won this many games in a row, but who have they beaten? And I sort of lose any sort of sympathy for the who have they beaten argument when they've beaten the teams that they've beaten the way that the Patriots have. For the 54-13 win against the Jets, 25-0 against the Falcons in Week 11, they can't control who's on the other side of the field. And they have dominated those teams. I don't care who you're playing. When you're winning games week after week after week by 3 scores, 4 scores, 5 scores in some of these instances. Like, that is impressive, regardless of who your opponents are. And you're doing that every single week. So, I think the Patriots have absolutely earned every single bit of this 8-4 record. It's not just like they're beating up on bad teams. And that was sort of the Bills earlier in the season, just like you said, when they had that cupcake part of their schedule. Sure, those were bad teams, but those games were over within 20 minutes of game time. It was halfway through the second quarter, and it's like, all right, well, now the question isn't do the Bills win, it's do the Bills win by 21 or do they win by 17? And so both of these teams have taken advantage of the AFC East schedule and gotten to the point they've gotten to by doing so. So I think it really comes down to which team can assert what it wants to do in this game. It's going to be a really fun one to watch, because when the Bills have been at their best, it's been not quite what they were offensively last year, but something close to it. Josh Allen being efficient through the air, hitting some big plays to Stephon Diggs, hitting some big plays to Emmanuel Sanders, which we actually haven't seen in a couple of weeks, doing a little bit on the ground, and just really overwhelming their opponents with what they can do every single time they get their hands on the ball. The Patriots, when they've been at their best, exactly like you said, a great defense. Mac Jones is not making any mistakes. They've got this two-headed monster in Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson. And as we saw in the win over the Titans, that is starting to open things up for the Patriots passing game. Mac Jones throwing for more than 300 yards and 9.7 yards per attempt in the win over the Titans in Week 12. So both these teams can do what they do very well and very reliably. I just want to trust the Bills. This is like, we're still getting a little bit of home field in terms of the lines here. So we're basically looking at this as being a pick'em game on a neutral field. I think that is fair. I still want to ride with the Bills. I think you got to knock off Josh Allen, knock off this offense before you can assert yourself as the king of the AFC East. And so I will go ahead and take the Bills. A very fun game, I think, that we've got ahead of us between these two teams in Week 13. Let's get on to our second picks here. DeWitt, 49ers and Seahawks. We are both going to be in this game. You've got to pick on the side. I've got to pick on the total. Of course, we haven't seen the Seahawks yet in Week 12. They've got the Monday night game against the Washington football team. Seahawks are 2.5-point underdogs in this game at home right now on BetMGM against the 49ers. Let's hear your pick for this one.
Yeah, I like the 49ers taking the points, minus 2.5, in Seattle. I'm not too worried about like the road game here. The Seattle's just in a bad place right now. And this could all change tonight when this game comes out and maybe the Seattle comes out and puts on a really good performance in Washington. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of doubting it. I mean, I'm just not seeing that. I bet against the Seahawks last week too on this show. The 49ers are like a team that's on the upslope right now. They're 3-0 since they lost to the Cardinals. And what happened after that Cardinals loss? George Kittle came back. The offense opened up the offense, got really good rushing game from Mitchell yesterday, 133 yards and a touchdown. Jimmy G still kind of scares me as a quarterback. Sure. But if he's not making mistakes, they can win the game because their defense is awesome. Joey Bosa has 11 sacks already. That's more than he had his rookie year when they went to the Super Bowl. He's kind of dominating on that defensive line. So, Seattle is it just feels like we're going through a bad breakup here with Russell Wilson and Carroll. And it almost feels like this team's ready to push the reset button. So I'm just kind of like banking on that it's, the drama that we saw this summer is becoming more true. And, I'm just banking that this Seahawks team is not going to rebound at all here and like find out that, suddenly that Russell Wilson's great again because his finger is a little bit better. I'm just thinking this is a bad football team, and I'll just keep betting against them because they have some name brand recognition out there.
I think that's totally fair. That's the side that I would be on as well if I were picking a side. And I agree. Not only is it going to be one of Russell or Pete Carroll who are gone from Seattle after this season, wouldn't be surprised if both of them are off to a different spot. Maybe Pete Carroll, maybe it's the end of the line. Who knows? That's total speculation. But the Seahawks team is clearly reeling, and that's before what could be another loss against the Washington football team on Monday night. However, you made one point about Russell Wilson, which is why I like over 46.5. And it is that we should expect him to be getting healthier and healthier as the weeks go by. And when he first suffered that finger injury, the timetable that the team put on it was 6 to 8 weeks. Well, guess what tonight is? Tonight is week 6. Tonight is the 6th week that Russell Wilson has been removed from the incidence of that finger injury. So he is now actually in the timetable for which he should have been playing football. I understand why you rush him back. He's a guy who's never been hurt in his career. I mean, that even goes back to Wisconsin and North Carolina State, a guy who has just never been hurt at the highest levels of football. And with everything that was ahead of them in the NFC as a whole and the NFC West, just within their own division, like they really needed him back if they were going to compete for a playoff spot. That's basically out the window. So I understand why you rush him back. It didn't work out. But now we're at the point where we would have been expecting him back, and that's tonight. Next week, he's 7 weeks removed from that injury. So there's reason to believe we're going to see more of the Russell Wilson who we know both tonight against Washington and next week in this game against San Francisco than we've seen in his first 2 games back from that finger injury. You combine that with what the 49ers have done, as you've said over these last 3 weeks, getting George Kittle back and hitting the ground running. The run game looks awesome. And obviously we're going to have to keep an eye on this Deebo Samuel injury. Hopefully he's able to go in this game. But with him in the backfield, with Elijah Mitchell healthy and in the backfield, they've been able to get back to that Kyle Shanahan style of football that has made them a very dangerous offense since Shanahan has been in San Francisco. This game, if we see a good offensive performance from Russell Wilson and the Seahawks, I promise you, DeWitt, this number is bumping up at least a point by tomorrow. And with what we can expect from San Francisco, with them getting back to being able to do what they want to do, we've seen those big offensive games now, weeks and weeks and weeks in a row, 34 points against the Vikings yesterday. I think we see a good offensive game between these two teams. I'd be willing to bet that if you're sitting down on Sunday to bet on this game, we're looking more at a total of like 48.5 or 48 or even 49. So I want to get it now while I feel like it's going to be at its absolute low point of the week.
Yeah, and just one note on Deebo Samuel, inside injuries, the freelancer they use at The Athletic and is great. They said that Deebo, even if it's a mild groin strain, is probably going to miss some time. So that's one thing to keep an eye on here is, he said it wasn't that big of a deal. He didn't want to make it worse during the game yesterday. But, it's groin strains are something that you just don't kind of come back the next week from. So that's something to keep in mind, especially as we look at like fantasy waivers tomorrow. And there's not going to be an injury report before fantasy waivers tomorrow. So
good thing to keep in mind for sure. Hopefully we see Deebo Samuel out there, but either way, we're riding you 49ers minus 2.5, me with the over 46.5 when the 49ers and Seahawks get together next week. That's it for the NFL side of this episode of Best on the Board, and that's it for Andrew DeWitt on this episode of Best on the Board. DeWitt, good luck to you tonight. You've got one more pick from last week riding on Washington tonight, so good luck with that, and good luck with these picks next week.
All right, have a good one.
All right, NBA coming up in just a second here, but first, BetMGM, the presenting sponsor of Best on the Board at The Athletic. Right now, you can go over to BetMGM, bet $10 to win $200. Any bet, whatever it is, bet 10, win $200, and get a free year-long subscription to The Athletic. Go to BetMGM.com/TABest to take advantage of this offer from the king of sportsbooks. Again, it's bet 10 to win 200. Whatever your bet is, you bet 10, you win 200, and you get that free year to The Athletic. BetMGM.com/TABest. This is a new customer offer if it's your first time at BetMGM. Terms and conditions apply. Okay, NBA time on this episode of Best on the Board. Tess Melas from No Dunks in The Athletic joining us here. Tess, what's going on, man? How you doing?
I am doing wonderful, Michael. How are you?
I am also doing wonderful. I like that. I like to hear. It, and it's fun. Last week we get a little bit chastened, right, on our NBA picks. Things did not go so well for us. So I like that we're coming back on the prop side of things. 3 picks between the two of us, all prop plays. I guess 4 picks really. I sort of got mine combined into one. But no matter what, we're talking all props all day on this NBA weekly segment here on Best on the Board. So why don't you get us started? Karl-Anthony Towns has a point prop at 21.5 tonight. You going over or under that number?
I'm going over. He's playing Miles Turner and the Indiana Pacers, who he plays really well against. 29-12 against Miles Turner throughout his entire career, and 33-11 over his last 3. I kind of like just the point number more than the points plus assists plus rebounds, 34.5. Because that can get a little bit murky, a little bit, little too many factors there. But the 21.5 is easily an over for me because Karl-Anthony Towns is playing really, really well. On Saturday night, he scored 28 points, and it could have been a heck of a lot more. He only took 16 shots to get 28 points, and he was willing to give it up to other guys. D'Angelo Russell, Anthony Edwards were getting their shots. So I think, just by the law of averages, he gets even more shots tonight. But I feel like that 21.5 is just kind of low. He fouled out as well against Philly in that double overtime game. So I just expect a bit of a bounce back where he's focusing on being on the floor. He's averaged 23 points per game this season. But with Indiana coming off a back-to-back and the way he's played against Miles Turner, that 21.5 is too juicy to pass up.
Yeah, I like this one too. I was clicking through looking at props today, and by the time I got around through clicking, I never even really made it to this game. And so when you sent this to me as one of your 2 picks, I was like, oh wow, 21.5 for Karl-Anthony Towns. This looks nice. And so I like this one. I don't know if I'm going to play it myself, but definitely would be supporting your side if I were going to play it. I'll tell you what I will be playing. Eric Gordon taking on a larger role for Houston of late. And I really like everything that is set up for him right now because of the fact that, this team just is desperate for scores. It's desperate for scores. It's desperate for playmakers. And maybe John Wall is back eventually. Maybe John Wall factors in for this team eventually. Maybe it's not too far away, but it's not happening right now. And either way, I think Eric Gordon's going to be a player that this team has to ask a lot out of really all season long as he's there. So over 15.5 points, over 18.5 points plus assists. I think both of those are there for him. I mean, right now he's really sort of acting as the de facto point guard for this team. And you just look back over at his game logs here, 14 shot attempts in his last game over the weekend, 9 before that, 8 before that, 17 and 13 in the 2 games before that. He is this team's, sort of go-to guy. He sort of has to be the primary playmaker and scorer on the perimeter for this team. And so long as he is that, I like the way that these numbers shake out for him. I really like the way everything shakes out for him in terms of just being a pure producer for this team. He also had 7 assists in his last game, in this team's last game. So again, he's like, no one draws up a season with Eric Gordon as their point guard, but he sort of is the de facto point guard for this team with the way it's constructed right now. And so as long as he's going to have the ball in his hands as often as he should for them, as long as he's going to be able to play upwards of 30, 32 minutes every single night, again, something we should expect from him at this point, these numbers just feel a little too low and like they haven't adjusted to the reality of what this team is right now.
I love it, Michael. We're going a little bit deeper here, looking for the player props that maybe people have passed up, like Karl-Anthony Towns, Wolves, Pacers. Not the first game you click on, as well as these Houston Rockets. These two teams going at each other tonight, OKC and Houston combined, 9 and 29 the records are. And I'm sure people are overlooking what is going on in the Houston backcourt. Much more of the story is that John Wall thing that you brought up. But they are showcasing Eric Gordon for a potential trade. Eric Gordon would definitely help a contending team, and he's definitely going to be moved by the February trade deadline, in my opinion, and he's doing a really good job of it. When Eric Gordon has something to play for and something to focus on, he can be a really good player in this league, and he's producing as you laid out those numbers. Again, I think this is something that is probably just in line with his averages as far as the numbers go. They're 15.5 point total and the 18.5 points in assists, but he's producing, and as you said, it's just a production by default here with the guys the young guys that he's playing with in Jalen Green and Kevin Porter Jr. So he'll get his shots.
Yeah, you can always find that in the NBA. And maybe I've got a little bit of an emotional hedge on this too, because at least for this week, he is my incredibly weak consolation to losing Ja Morant for at least a few weeks on my fantasy team. Scooped up Eric Gordon. So not exactly going to be Ja 2.0 for me, but at least can produce with the opportunities that he's got before him in Houston. Let's get one more play on the board here, Tess. Donovan Mitchell, his point prop tonight, 24.5. And again, we're feeling good, all positive, all overs today.
Yeah, this one's a little bit different in that his prop number here is over his actual average. But I think this is a good spot for him to break out because he's been quiet lately. 18, 13, 16, and 21 in his last 4 games. So why is he going to bust through 24.5 points? Well, I like him against the Blazers defense. They like to trap with Yusuf Nurkic, and it's not really working out for them that well. They are the 29th ranked defense in the league. Along with the Portland backcourt, it's not going to be able to stop Donovan Mitchell and Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum. I do like that Dame is on the other side of the floor, though, when facing Donovan Mitchell, because I think Mitchell will be up to playing against him. And again, it's just it's a spot where he's due. That 18, 13, 16, and 21 his last 4, that's not Donovan Mitchell-like numbers. So I think he should jump through that 25-point barrier with the defense that the Blazers will provide. But I'm a little bit worried because the Blazers are an extremely bad road team. Going into Utah here, there is a chance that this could be a blowout. Mm-hmm. But, being that the Blazers are playing a little bit well lately, playing more respectable on the road, even though they're 1-9 on the road, I think it'll be a close game, and it'll allow Donovan Mitchell to be on the floor long enough for him to get to that 25-point total. So give me the over. This is more of a field play than more of a thinker play with my Karl-Anthony Towns or the Eric Gordon plays that really makes sense. I just think that Mitchell will see Damian Lillard and Yusuf Nurkic and CJ McCollum on the other end of the floor, and the eyes will go big, and so will the scoreboard for him. 25 and over, I think.
Yeah, you love having guys on the other side who can come back and score it the way that Lillard and McCollum can. And then you also like the fact that, even Utah's a 7.5-point favorite tonight, which I believe it's the second highest spread on the board. The only one higher, Philly, 14.5-point favorites at home against Orlando. 222.5 is the total on this game. That is the second highest total, only one that's higher. Bulls and Hornets at 223.5. So this is a game where we are certainly expecting to see points on the board from both teams. And that is always something you like when you are going to bet an over point prop. Donovan Mitchell, over 24.5, wrapping things up for us on this episode of Best on the Board. Thanks so much for joining us. If you're following us here, good luck. If you're tailing us, I guess you're kind of a jerk, but we'll wish you good luck as well. For Taz, for Andrew DeWitt, I am Michael Beller. Thanks again for listening to this episode of Best on the Board. Good luck to you. We'll talk to you soon. As always, happy betting.